Axis Bank, the third largest private sector bank in assets in India, has been focusing on digital and technology transformation, including transition to cloud and an open platform. These have led to strong business and digital customer growth for the bank. We are pleased to have with us Avinash Raghavendra, President and CIO at Axis Bank. He is at the helm of various technology and transformational initiatives at the bank, and he will shed light on some of the recent initiatives and how the bank is transitioning to become future ready. Avinash, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So please share what are the new business and growth areas that you foresee in the next few years, specifically in India, and how are you looking to drive the business growth for your bank?
The first thing is that as a focus that we obviously have is in terms of deposit mobilization. The second thing is, like every other bank, I mean, we also want to sort of be very distinctive in a digital offering, and we have actually come out openly and said that okay, I mean, we have a bank within a bank kind of a concept, where the digital bank is going to be eventually be over a period of time, start taking lion's share in terms of carrying its own digital balance sheet, also carrying its own P&L. So these are areas that we are focused on big time. A lot of the investments that you saw on our go inside a mobile banking app, and which is the world's highest rated mobile banking app out there, especially if you look at the Play Store ratings, has been a very concentrated effort in that direction. There are two other areas that as a bank that we have sort of called out. Okay, the first one is around the fact that okay, like every other bank, we are present in the urban, semi-urban areas. I mean, how do we sort of focus in terms of what we call as the RUSU segment a lot more, the rural, the semi-urban kind of segments, right? Because that is where the entire growth story of India is going to be. And about 3 years back, we thought of this particular concept. About 2 years ago, it sort of came into fruition with a new department, a new vertical being created within the bank, which focused on what we call as the entire Bharat segment. So this Bharat segment basically has got its own requirements. I mean, this is where the ticket size can be smaller, but the number of transactions is going to be much higher. Okay, so we have to actually sort of come up with various customized product offerings, which may not be very relevant in the metros. It may not be very relevant in the larger cities, but which is very relevant when it comes to the Bharat segment itself. Okay, so there is a complete vertical which was essentially created, and from a technology standpoint also, we had to pivot in terms of the kind of offerings that we are going to have for this particular segment is going to be very different, and the kind of technology backbone that we would need to support all of this is also bound to be very different. The last but not the least is the bank has a massive, customer service transformation journey also in place. Okay, we call it as Project Sparsh, and the point of this one is that okay, how do we improve the entire customer experience?
Please share with us Axis Bank's key transformation strategy and priorities that aim at future-proofing the organization, including what are some of the key milestones you've achieved since you've embarked on this journey.
From a technology transformation perspective, I mean, we basically said that, okay, there were, few imperatives that we need to be focusing on. And the first amongst them was, of course, the fact that, okay, we need to be focusing on the customer journey as such. So how do we look in terms of journeys, which are, consistent, which are not broken, where the UI UX is all, super critical. I mean, they should not come as an afterthought. They really have to be, front and center, and, journeys which actually, end to end can be claimed to be digital. Okay, so that was one of the first imperatives that we basically looked at. The second one that we said is that, okay, I mean, some of these journeys can end up taking, long time in terms of implementation, etc. How do we choose technologies? How do we actually pivot the Axis Bank tech stack in terms of softwares, tools, partners, with whom we can basically focus in terms of accelerated deliveries? We decided to take a strategy in terms of the fact that okay, we are going to start building things on our own greatly, or work with partners who can basically work at our own pace. Accelerated delivery became a big part of it. Okay. When we when we basically said that, okay, when we are now going to be taking charge of, at least the engagement layer with which we sort of engage with the customers, as well as, how do we sort of integrate these layers, with the traditional product processes itself. What we also realized was that, okay, none of this is going to be possible unless and until we, focus in terms of fixing the basic, which effectively means that, okay, there is this entire plethora of core banking applications, lending applications, etc., which are very critical. They actually, meet the requirements. But obviously, we need to be augmenting them to meet the new digital reality, where payments, mobile banking, internet banking, a whole lot of data demands, etc., are there. Yeah. Now, this is very different from the world that we used to be in even 4-5 years ago. Right. So basically, with all of this focus in terms of UI, UX, customer offerings, etc., we said that, okay, we also need to be working in terms of, what are the things that we are going to be doing at the back end. And there's a massive modernization program, massive upgrade program, etc., that we have actually, sort of done, embarked on, focused item by item. We have basically, been sort of running after that. The last two pivots on which we basically focused on a lot was in terms of, risk and governance. So super critical for us to stay resilient, super critical for us to stay, ready from a perspective of any cyber challenges. So we had to sort of, focus a lot on those areas as well. All of this clearly requires, investment in talent. So that is another area, where the bank basically said that, okay, I mean, if we are going to be doing all of these activities, obviously, we have to invest in terms of good talent. We need to invest in terms of, a lot of start thinking like a tech company rather than, like a bank, which typically used to work with partners. And in that direction also, I mean, if I were to look at the tech team itself, right, our size over the last 3 years has sort of, grown almost 3 times. It's 3x, the kind of numbers that we used to be in. So basically, these were the imperatives that we sort of, focused on. And each and every imperative, ended up creating almost 4 or 5 large projects. And as we speak, happy to say that, okay, we are, towards the fag end, at least of that journey.
Share with us what are some of the key challenges that you have been facing in digital enablement, and what are some of the gaps that you have in your technology infrastructure that you have looked to address through your initiatives?
Traditionally, the digital channels, were all monolithic, right? I mean, they required individual development efforts on virtually each and every individual channel, be it around data or be it around business logic. And many of the times, we would end up spending a lot of time in terms of, having all channels end up implementing the same set of logics, right? So that is where, I mean, we sort of realize the fact that, okay, I mean, we will have to, sort of decouple the kind of architecture that we had. So very loosely speaking, I mean, while we have product processors or the system of records, as we sort of call it, we have sort of, worked in terms of modernizing our architecture that, okay, the areas of integration, the areas of workflows, the areas of customer engagement, okay, all of this will be loosely coupled and completely independent of the system of records themselves. Okay. Now, how do we implement all of this? Because banks typically have been, doing stuff on-prem. So what we have done is that, okay, we said that, okay, while the product processes may end up taking its own time in terms of sort of moving to the cloud, but some of these other areas can definitely shift to the cloud. Okay, but even in terms of cloud, there are multiple offerings that we essentially have. So we decided and said that, okay, the way we will have to do is we will have to sort of, implement digital microservices. The intent being that, okay, how do we have the business logic, become more and more reusable? Okay. Focus in terms of centralized data layer. Focus in terms of ease in terms of infrastructure operations by having a layer which is completely cloud agnostic. Right. In order to achieve agility from to meet frequent business change requirements, which is obviously, the need of the hour today. And as we were sort of, looking around, that is where, partners like Red Hat, stuff like Openshift sort of, came into being. So like I said, when we speak about scale, previously everything as an answer had to be vertical scaling. If we have to look horizontal, then obviously we need something on Kubernetes. And we as a bank were very clear about the fact that, okay, we don't want to tie ourselves down, with one single service provider. I mean, how do we have a layer on top which can work on-prem, which can work on cloud, which can work across different cloud service providers? And that is where, something like Openshift sort of, meets the kind of a requirement that as a bank we had sort of identified. The other important area which we realized on this one is that as we go more and more digital, as we go more and more cloud, right? I mean, we will also need to be ready in terms of the entire, patch management cycles, the entire vulnerability addressing the kind of cycles, right? And that is where, working with a partner like Red Hat actually helps, because there are a lot of open source tools also which claim to do the same. But the biggest problem that one ends up encountering over there is, in terms of the patching cycles, if at all there is a 0-day vulnerability, I mean, who's going to take ownership of that? I mean, how do you address it, right? So some of these are choices that we have ended up making. And it is sort of, work for us.
Please share with us, how are you going about moving towards this multi-cloud, the entire measures towards shifting to the cloud agnostic environment, reducing your concentration risks and managing the interoperability in the multi-cloud journey?
The easiest way to look at cloud is, okay, I mean, we have a couple of data centers of our own. I mean, how do we now start interfacing with another data center, which is, provided by some of these global players? From a technology perspective, if all the developments are sort of moving towards the cloud, and we also need to be engaging with the cloud service providers, then effectively, how do we end up moving the workloads to the cloud themselves? Now, that is where it becomes a little tricky, because the core product processors are today not cloud ready as such. Okay, it will require a lot of transformation journey, etc. It's not something which can happen overnight. It's something which is a multi-year kind of a program. Okay, so which is where the entire decoupling architecture sort of has helped us. So the other area that we focused on was in terms of the entire integration layer. So as a bank, what we have done is we have completely decoupled the integration layers that we have. So when I say the integration layer, what it effectively means is a service for account opening is today available as an API. A service for payment is available as an API. A service for checkbook request is available as an API. So we have actually done a lot of extensive work on this. On the retail side, we have got over 700 APIs. On the corporate banking side, I mean, we have over 200, 250 of them. And all of these are, while we started as an API, a lot of these are now getting converted into microservices themselves. And these integration layers are today, the segue for actually integrating whatever we are now building on the cloud with the on-prem world. The other important thing on this one is since we want to be cloud agnostic, because we want to have the ability to choose between the service providers. I mean, because we want to basically go where the best service is available. There is a question from a perspective of the fact that, okay, we can't have all our risks with a single player themselves. I mean, it is going to be a multi-cloud kind of a choice, which most of the people are going to make. We were sort of prepared for actually making that as a choice even 3 years ago. And I think we continue in the same journey. Okay, whenever we are working with any of these kind of players, how do we ensure the fact that, okay, our data is protected, right? And that is where, this entire thing around key management and the fact that, okay, who's going to own these keys, becomes super critical. So what we do is every data which is there in the cloud is encrypted, and the key management stays with the bank.
So you mentioned earlier about Red Hat Openshift system and how you have, how this has helped you in your cloud agnostic and multi-cloud journey. Give us details about this implementation, including the technology and process changes and the applications that were implemented on this.
So this journey started about, a couple of years back. We were looking in terms of, like I said, I mean, we wanted to scale our applications horizontally. We wanted to basically, get them to be cloud ready. And we wanted to sort of, have it work on a software layer, which basically meets these requirements, right? This is when we were actually embarking on a, modernization journey. I mean, we had a previous version of our mobile apps, which was built on a slightly more traditional architecture. And that is where we said that, okay, if we want to sort of, with more and more of a transaction layers moving digital, and with the bank already coming out with a stated objective of the fact that, okay, we want to sort of, focus in terms of our mobile app, sort of make it an equivalent of a branch in your hand kind of a concept in form of an app itself. Then these are, some very basic things that we will need to have in place. Horizontal scaling, ability for us to sort of, take the workload on premise as well as on cloud. And that is where we were sort of, we at that point of time evaluated various partners, including open source and what have you. And amongst the choices that we finally zeroed in now was, in terms of the entire Openshift stack, where we said that, okay, here is a stack which actually allows us to sort of, host Kubernetes. It basically allows us to, and I remember, when we were basically making this particular choice, some of these service providers did not really have their data center in the country either. Okay, so we said that, okay, even if we were to start on-prem, how much of an effort would it be for us to sort of, take this workload to the cloud? Now, having done this kind of a deployment for mobile bank and seeing the advantages that we have, accrued from that particular investment that we did, I mean, we have basically said that, okay, I mean, this has got to be, the choice that we make even for some of our other digital offerings. So today, for example, we have now the retail internet bank as well as the corporate internet bank, also sort of, sitting on top of Red Hat OpenShift. For the very same reason, I mean, it allows us scale, it allows us interoperability between both cloud as well as on-prem. And frankly, the other important benefit that we have seen is, reusability of the business layer. I mean, like I said, previously it used to be, the business layers used to be very tightly coupled with the respective applications. I mean, what we have done is this has allowed us even decoupling of that. So it has helped reduce the development efforts greatly.
So tell us about some of the key benefits you've seen coming out of this and the entire architecture shift that you talked about for your mobile and internet banking, including if you can share some KPIs to show the impact that you've had as a result of this implementation towards your efficiency or business growth.
When it comes to OpenShift, given the fact that it allows us to become cloud agnostic and it allows us for vertical scaling, I mean, what it has helped us do is, I mean, the development efforts on OpenShift, okay, and which we have been able to replicate for our other journeys as well, has sort of reduced by at least 40% for us. Okay. The operational costs of managing one single software layer has also sort of, come down dramatically. Otherwise, previously on this particular layer, I mean, with every application, we used to make, different choices. So that particular operational cost has also sort of, dramatically reduced for us. And if I look at the skill set of the number of people who are sort of, managing this round the clock from the bank standpoint, as well as from a partner standpoint. From the bank standpoint, I mean, we have some 7-8 people. From a partner standpoint, we have about 4. Okay, so that's a very, very optimum number given the kind of workload that we are sort of running on top of this. The other areas, like I essentially said that, okay, it has helped us to sort of, create microservices. And while we had previously invested big time in terms of APIs, with over 700 APIs on the retail side, over 250 APIs on the corporate side. Okay, from a microservice standpoint, I mean, that is where we are now trying to convert these APIs into microservices themselves. And the number over there also, is close to, about 100 odd that we have managed to reach. And it's a number which is only, growing as we, keep on deploying more and more stuff on the cloud. See, this basically sits in the infra layer. Okay. And obviously for any of the digital channels, the infra layer is super critical because it allows you to scale. It allows you to stay resilient. Okay. And and both of these are, constant demands. Okay. I mean, there is no way that anybody can hope to have, a very high customer recall, or for that matter, a good feedback from the customer, unless and until your digital channels are able to scale, unless and until your digital channels, are actually able to meet the latency requirements. Okay. So this OpenShift has obviously helped us in that particular direction. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we basically sort of, plugged for OpenShift.
Also, tell us about your future plans for this. Now that you have this architecture in place, how are you looking to scale this? How are you looking at other applications also to be transitioned towards this in this hybrid model and using this architecture that you have now?
Most of our digital journeys are basically, in a very similar kind of a direction. Okay. And so we have a little bit of a cloud first kind of a philosophy when it comes to, especially when it comes to the customer facing channels. Okay. Every new thing that we are actually trying to do on the customer facing channels, I mean, it is today hosted on the cloud. And a lot of this hosting is possible because of, some of our early experiences in the same direction. So on cloud, we have already said that, okay, it's a 3-year journey that we have embarked in. I mean, we hope to have at least a good 70-75% of our applications which are customer facing on cloud themselves. And we are somewhere little over the halfway mark, and I think we are well on course in terms of meeting those as a target. The other big area which obviously most of the industries are going to be focusing big time on is going to be this entire buzz around generative AI, artificial intelligence in banking and stuff like that, which again is going to be a very cloud specific kind of a journey, purely because a lot of these are these newer models, etc. It is not going to be possible for us to sort of encompass all of them on-prem. I mean, we will have to experiment big time, and this is where we will have to work more and more with the cloud service providers. Okay. And again, some of the choices that we have made is bound to sort of help us over there. When it comes to AI also, we may have to go multi-cloud. And when it comes to any kind of a multi-cloud kind of a dealing, something like Openshift obviously sort of so far has proven to be meeting our expectations. And obviously, if I look at the product roadmap, it also seems to be, focusing a lot more in that direction.
So what would you say were the biggest challenges in this transition of your entire legacy framework towards this, and how did you address them?
See, the biggest challenge is, taking a step back and trying to get the right architecture. We spent a good amount of time trying to get the right architecture. Okay. I mean, which is the reason why the entire integration layer is something, which the bank decided to insource. I mean, that is a layer that we are completely in command of. I mean, this is not something that we have sort of outsourced. We have sort of focused on that. The second important thing is that it's a massive mindset shift, working on cloud versus working on premise. So 2 years back, we decided to set up a separate competency center which focused on cloud. Okay, so this competency center actually had people from different industries sort of pulled together, who had worked successfully on cloud implementations in different industries over there, not necessarily banking. And the learnings that all these people had was something which we were actually able to sort of put together, create a framework from a banking standpoint, looking at all the regulations that banks are supposed to sort of follow through on. And I think the competency center also sort of helped us immensely, because the competency center got us the framework. It also allowed us to accelerate big time. So some of these things have sort of helped us big time. The other important thing in hindsight, which has worked for us, is the fact that we were always very, very conscious of the fact that even when we go to the cloud, we will have to think about governance. We will actually have to think about the cyber risks. We will have to think about how do we stay cloud agnostic, how do we protect the interests of the bank, and indirectly protect the interests of the customers themselves. It may have taken us a little longer in terms of some of those framework designs that we ended up doing, some of those checklists that we ended up incorporating over there. But as we look back, I think it has made the journey now much simpler for us.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Avinash, for your time and for explaining these various initiatives in detail.